Hi, I'm Mash Ponigala, Creative Director and Brand Strategist at Spellbrand. In today's topic, it's something very exciting, very interesting. It's not new, but it is quite powerful. The concept of brand archetypes. Now, the concept of archetype is really, to put it into simple terms, it's almost like saying it's a stereotype, right? So a certain figure or a certain symbol represents a larger kind of segment, right? It's a sampling of that segment. Now, the story of archetypes goes back to the beginning of humanity. If you look at stories and epics from thousands of years back, right? The ancient even from the Sumerian times. And then you have, of course, the ancient Greeks, and then the Romans, and so on and so forth. You will find that in all the great stories, or in fact, in any kind of story from the ancient times, there was this concept of archetypes all the way through. So archetypes are characters. These characters represent certain kind of fundamental structure of the human psyche, the way people think, the way people behave. These are predictable ways, predictable paths that humans take. And those can then be identified as archetypes. And based on that behavior, we can then predict what the likely outcome of their kind of path would be. So if you take a look at any of the ancient epics, and this could be going back to the epic of Gilgamesh, right? From the ancient Sumerians. Or if you look at the Greeks, you have Homer's Iliad, or the stories of Hercules, right? Or if you look at biblical stories, if you look at even modern day kind of epics that we have. And of course, the most recent novels, that's books. And finally, of course, media, that is movies. You will find that every great story has these elements, at least in terms of characters, that fall into certain categories, certain archetypes. Now, this was really recognized and distilled by a famous psychiatrist, a 19th century psychiatrist, Carl Jung. He sort of took these archetypes, these concepts, and boiled them down, studied them, and created 12 archetypes that broadly kind of categorize the human psyche. Now, so what is so exciting about archetypes? Why am I kind of giving you a history lesson when this channel, myself, we're all about brands, brand strategies, how to take brands to the next level, how to build the best brands, and so on and so forth. Well, archetypes play an important role in building robust brands, in creating brand strategies. In fact, archetypes are at the core of all successful brand strategies, brand campaigns, marketing strategies, and so on. Now, archetypes are not only just the brands, it actually, in fact, starts with your target audience. So your target audience, your customers, the people that come in contact with your brand, they fall under certain archetypes. And then your brand has to align with those archetypes by being, or rather embracing, certain archetypes. So you have, on one hand, your target audience falling into certain archetypes, and then your brand has to create a strategy, has to embrace a certain kind of archetypes so that it aligns with your target audience, with the target audience, so that it effectively communicates the right kind of message and creates that kind of bond and relationship with the target audience. So for any successful kind of brand strategy to work, you need to go back and look at your target audience. You need to understand who it is that are important to your brand, right? You got the primary kind of target audience, and then you have the tertiary, the secondary, and then tertiary, and so on and so forth, or concentric circles of audience. But if you identify the archetypes properly, then you can plan out not only your brand strategy, but also your messaging strategy, and then your marketing strategy. All right. In a series of videos, I will talk about the 12 different types of brand archetypes, and I will give you examples in terms of the target audience of that particular archetype, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and what they're looking for. And then I'll also give you examples of successful brands kind of embracing that kind of archetype or related archetypes, and how they're marketing to the target audience. And that way you can then decide, after going through this exercise, what your audience primary archetype is and how you can formulate your strategy, right? Okay, but a word of caution here. This is a business model. This is a mental model. So this is a strategy model. It does not mean that you just pick these up and blindly follow them. You need to use these as a framework, right? Archetypes are a framework, just like any brand strategy is. And so you need to take it with a grain of salt. You need to be careful. Every business has its own set of limitations, has its set of strengths and weaknesses, and so on and so forth. So you need to really be careful when you think through and create that kind of strategy based on the archetypes. All right, so let's look into the 12 different kinds of archetypes in a kind of a broad context, and then we will dig deeper into each in separate videos. All right, let's look at the archetypes. All right, the first one is the ruler. Now, the ruler, as you might guess, is a leader, right? Their priority is to bring order. So the ruler is quiet, but they may come across as a kind of a perfectionist. Now, this isn't a bad thing if they can consistently project an air of competence and can back that up. The ruler naturally wants everyone to follow their lead. Next, we have the creator. Now, the creator's main priority is to express their creativity. Now, compared to the ruler, these guys are quite laid back. Now, this is both the target audience and brands. They love novelty and they love to create new combinations. The creator is clever, self-sufficient, and they can chaff at any sort of imposed conformity. Next, we have the sage. The sage is a thinker, a philosopher. Their top priority is cognition and critical thinking. They seek to understand the world around them, and doing so is their grandest adventure. Now, to do this, they bring to bear great intelligence and analytical skills. They can be quick, actually sometimes too quick, to offer a fact or quote in any situation. Next is the innocent. The innocent is optimistic to the point of almost being naive. They search for happiness in any situation and see the good in everything and everyone. The innocent tends to want to please others and pursues a kind of a sense of belonging. Next is the explorer, the bold traveler. They set out for uncharted waters, not necessarily hoping for adventure. It's more that they must answer the call to see what's out there. They have a deep love of discovering new places, things, or even people. They can be prone to perfectionism in that they're usually never satisfied. Then you have the caregiver. The caregiver has a very high empathy. They want the best for other people and can't stand it when another being is in pain. They offer physical and emotional protection whenever they can, sometimes to the extent that others come to rely on them too much. This archetype can be prone to self-sacrifice and can often become a martyr. Next is the magician, the revolutionary. The magician is an innovator, creating remarkable things seemingly from thin air. They're masters of transformation, frequently reinventing themselves. They're capable of turning a negative into a positive, but they can also do the reverse. Then you have an archetype that you can recognize very easily, the hero. The hero has uncommon strength and vitality, and they use these assets to fight for virtuous causes. They will go to any lengths to avoid defeat. It's hard for the hero to lose because they don't give in. And hero is more recognizable because you can see hero, in every film or in every novel, right? And in our own lives, we are heroes. Okay, the next one is the rebel. The rebel provokes. They stand out from the crowd. Like the creative, they resent conformity, but they're more roguish or aggressive about it. They enjoy going against the grain and avoiding the mainstream. They take pride in thinking for themselves. If taken to extremes, the rebel can become self-destructive. Quite the opposite, we have the lover. The lover is sensitive. The lover is sweet. They love to love. They lavish people they care about with affection. They enjoy anything that's pleasing. On a lighter note, we have the jester. The jester loves to laugh. Laughter is their medicine. They'll make others laugh if they can, but often they're just out to create entertainment for themselves. They're prone to boredom and pursue outlandish or unusual sources of entertainment, often creating them. They enjoy drawing people out of their shells and getting them to share a laugh. Finally, we have the orphan or everyman. The orphan wears their feelings on their sleeve. They often have unresolved psychic wounds and never hesitate to make that known. They often feel betrayed and they can be suspicious of others. The orphan can be cynical and manipulative, but playing the victim doesn't jive well with establishing a powerful brand. So, in this context, we will be looking at the orphan archetype as everyone's need for justice, acceptance, and belonging. The orphan represents every man or every woman. That is the ordinary kind of person, the everyday person. These 12 archetypes are really powerful. And yeah, they might sound a little, whimsical or theoretical in this video because I just took each archetype and just gave you kind of a brief outline. In subsequent videos, I will take each archetype and dig deep. I will look at each archetype from a user perspective, that is your target audience. This is consumers, customers, whatever you might want to call them. And I'll also take a look at it from a brand's perspective, the kind of brands that utilize these archetypes, each archetype, and succeed using those. So I'll be looking at examples, I'll be looking at strategies, kind of messages, what would work well for each kind of archetype and how you might go about doing your marketing campaigns and so on and so forth. At the end of this series, I hope that you will become well versed with this concept of archetypes and that you'll be able to use those archetypes in your own business to build your own brand. Personally, I've been using archetypes for a very long time to create and construct brand strategies for our clients. For every client, I start, of course, with the target audience and also creating the buyer persona. In doing so, I actually identify the archetype, not only the primary archetype, but sometimes a combination of archetypes. And that then gives me and my team clues as to the kind of message that the brand needs to communicate. And that exercise itself creates the brand archetype or the brand persona. So you got the buyer persona and then you got the brand persona. Both are archetypes and one complements the other. They need to align with each other. And that way, when we get to the messaging strategy phase for our clients, we create the right kind of messaging. There is no more guesswork. We will have the kind of grid or framework laid out. We then pick the right kind of messaging and of course come up with stories and things like that to communicate that messaging. So hopefully by the end of this series, you will also get this understanding of how to use archetypes to help you create your brand strategy and your marketing, messaging, and so on and so forth. All right. I hope you found this video useful. If you have any questions, just post them below. Of course, like I said, there's going to be more videos with more details, but in the meanwhile, just over the topic of archetypes or the history of archetypes, Carl Jung, and so on and so forth, just leave me a message and I'll try and get back to you. There's also an article that I wrote about the archetypes in general, like the overview, and I will leave a link in this video. Just check it out, and then till the next video, take care.